They are the founding fathers whose names are carved in stone across America's national monuments. They drafted the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, established the United States government, and set in motion a nation built on democracy. But how much do you really know about America's founding fathers? And what were some of the more interesting secrets that they held close to their chests? From one founding father who was almost certainly an alcoholic, another who claimed divine inspiration for his writings, and even another who had a son with one of his slaves, to the surprising way that one founding father died. Here are the untold stories of America's founding fathers. Before we dive into this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video, where we will reveal one of the most explosive secrets about America's founding fathers. John Adams, the second President of the United States and a key figure in the American Revolution, once described Thomas Jefferson as the greatest man in America when the two first met. The pair would become close friends throughout their lives, despite their political differences. But John Adams was not always such a fan of Thomas Jefferson. In fact, John Adams disliked Thomas Jefferson so much that he once called him a damn rascal. And there is one story in particular that may explain why. In 1776, John Adams wrote a letter to his wife Abigail in which he expressed his frustration with Thomas Jefferson, who was serving on a committee to draft a Declaration of Independence from the British Empire. He wrote that Jefferson was an ostentatious liar and said that he was afraid that the Virginian would make a fool out of the Continental Congress. However, in the same letter, Adams also admitted that Jefferson was a man of fine talents, both in writing and speaking, and that he had done wonders with the Declaration of Independence. Ultimately, Adams came to respect and admire Jefferson's work on the document, and the two men became close friends. Ben Franklin, one of the most well-known founding fathers, is famous for signing the Declaration of Independence and for his many scientific discoveries and inventions. But what many people do not know is that Ben Franklin also played a pivotal role in securing France's support for the American Revolution. Franklin was sent to Paris in 1776 to secure financial and military support from the French government. Despite being older than most of the other diplomats at the time and having difficulty walking due to gout, Franklin was up for the challenge. And he soon found himself in the good graces of the French king and queen. One evening, Franklin and his companions were invited to a party at the Palace of Versailles, but the guest list only included Franklin and one other American diplomat. Upon arrival, Franklin excused himself to the bathroom, where he slipped out a side door and snuck into the royal dining room. There, he filled 3 empty seats with wax figures that he had brought with him. When the king entered the room, he was shocked to see 3 empty seats surrounded by lit candles, which he assumed was a sign of great importance. Franklin then led the king and his court to the prepared carriage, where he presented them with letters inviting them to join him for a tour of the city. Once in Paris, Franklin continued to charm the French nobility, and they eventually agreed to fund and support the American cause. Thanks to Franklin's efforts, the French provided crucial military and financial aid that helped the Americans win the war. James Madison, often referred to as the father of the Constitution, was a key figure in drafting the United States governing document. But while he is celebrated for his contributions to the Constitution, not everyone was a fan of James Madison. In fact, many of his contemporaries viewed him as a weak and timid leader who lacked the strength and courage to stand up for his beliefs. These criticisms were particularly harsh in the early years of his career when he was known for being a shy and reserved individual. However, despite these setbacks, James Madison went on to become one of the most influential figures of his time. He overcame his personal struggles and emerged as a strong advocate for the new nation. His contributions to the Constitution helped establish the United States as a beacon of democracy, and his legacy continues to inspire people around the world today. While some may have doubted him in the past, it is clear that James Madison's impact on history is undeniable. Samuel Adams, a key player in the events leading up to the American Revolution, was a man driven by a deep sense of justice and a desire for freedom. But despite his noble intentions, Samuel Adams could sometimes be reckless and impulsive. One such instance occurred during the Boston Massacre of 1770, an incident that saw British soldiers fire on a crowd of unarmed civilians, killing 5 people. In the aftermath of the event, Adams, along with other members of the Sons of Liberty, wasted no time in capitalizing on the public outrage. They rallied the townspeople together and began to spread rumors that the British soldiers had acted unprovoked, further inciting the crowd and escalating the situation. This behavior, while understandable given the circumstances, was not without its consequences. The actions of Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty played a significant role in turning the tide against the British and ultimately led to the outbreak of the American Revolution. Alexander Hamilton was one of the most influential founding fathers, playing a crucial role in shaping the early years of the United States. As one of the authors of the Federalist Papers, he was instrumental in the ratification of the Constitution and later served as the first Secretary of the Treasury under President George Washington. But despite his many accomplishments, Alexander Hamilton was not without his flaws. One of the most notable was his tendency to be overly ambitious and sometimes reckless. This was evident in his proposal to assume state debts, which, while ultimately successful, was a highly controversial decision that nearly derailed his career. Nevertheless, Hamilton went on to play a critical role in establishing the nation's financial system and setting the foundation for its future economic growth. His legacy remains a subject of debate, but his contributions to the founding of the United States are undeniable. Thomas Paine was a writer and political activist who played a significant role in the American Revolution. His pamphlet Common Sense, published in 1776, was a powerful argument for independence from Britain and helped to sway public opinion in favor of the revolutionary cause. However, after the war, Paine's popularity waned and he became increasingly marginalized. Despite his contributions to the founding of the United States, Thomas Paine's legacy has been largely forgotten. In fact, some historians argue that his ideas were too radical for the newly formed nation and that his writings ultimately had more of an impact on the French Revolution than the American one. Regardless, his works remain an important part of the intellectual history of the era, and his contributions should not be overlooked. George Washington, the first President of the United States, was a towering figure in the early years of the nation. He presided over the Constitutional Convention that drafted the U.S. Constitution and served as the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. However, despite his many accomplishments, George Washington had his fair share of flaws. For one, he was often indecisive and struggled with making difficult choices. This was evident during the war when he hesitated to take decisive action that could have potentially changed the outcome of battles. Additionally, Washington was known for being aloof and sometimes dismissive of those around him. This created a sense of distance between himself and the people he was leading, which ultimately contributed to his decision to retire from public life after his presidency. Despite these flaws, Washington's legacy as the nation's first president and his contributions to the founding of the United States remain firmly established. John Hancock, the first person to sign the Declaration of Independence, was a wealthy merchant and political leader in colonial America. He is remembered not only for his bold signature on the Declaration, but also for his leadership in the movement for independence from Britain. However, John Hancock was not perfect, and he had his own share of secrets and scandals. One such scandal involved his close relationship with a former slave named Sally Hemings, with whom he had a son after he freed her. This relationship caused a rift in his family and tarnished his reputation in some circles. Additionally, Hancock was known for his extravagant spending habits, and his lavish lifestyle did not always align with the values of the burgeoning nation. Despite these flaws, Hancock's contributions to the founding of the United States and his unwavering commitment to the cause of independence remain an important part of American history. There is perhaps no founding father whose life was more shrouded in secrecy than Benjamin Rush. Not only was he a signer of the Declaration of Independence and a physician, but he also kept a secret from nearly everyone, including his closest friends and family, that he was a heavy drinker. In fact, it has been suggested that Benjamin Rush was an alcoholic. His fellow founding fathers knew of his drinking, but they kept it secret out of respect for him and to avoid any scandal. Unfortunately, Rush's drinking got him into trouble on several occasions, including one time when he showed up to a meeting with Thomas Jefferson completely drunk. Despite his flaws, Rush made significant contributions to the field of medicine and was a vocal advocate for the abolition of slavery. Now it is time to hear the most explosive secret about America's founding fathers. Are you ready? Here goes. One of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, had a son with one of his slaves, a woman named Sally Hemings. The child, a boy, was born in 1806, and at least 4 more followed over the next few years. Now, that is a bombshell. While these revelations about the founding fathers may be surprising or even shocking, they serve as a reminder that these individuals were complex human beings with both strengths and weaknesses. Their flaws do not diminish their contributions to the founding of the United States, but rather add to our understanding of the challenges and complexities of the time period. By learning more about the full stories of these men, we can gain a deeper appreciation for their accomplishments and the lasting impact they have had on our nation. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.